had a baby. It's been a while. We have not talked in a very long time, but as the title says, your girl is now a mother. It's wild to believe, but I love it. So let's chit chat. Let's talk about my trying to conceive story. Let's talk about my labor and delivery. Let's talk about what motherhood feels like. So I honestly wasn't sure when I wanted to have a baby. Like, I knew I wanted to have a kid, but I just wasn't sure like when. I was really enjoying my free time. I was traveling. You guys know I'm self-employed. So I just was really enjoying me. And people would always ask like, hey, when are you going to have kids? Because you guys know, if you don't know, I'm married. And I would just be like, you know, when God sees fit. But I never really had that urge to have a baby. So my niece was born last year in August. And I was supposed to help my sister in the delivery room, but she ended up coming 3 hours before my flight arrived. But I helped my sister for a few weeks with my niece when she was born. And oh my gosh, you guys, I loved it. Like, I was absolutely obsessed with my niece. I'm still obsessed with my niece. I love her so very much. But I really thoroughly enjoyed helping my sister with the baby. And granted, you know, it was a whole newborn and we were like missing out on sleep and stuff like that, but it felt natural. Taking care of my niece felt so natural. And I was like, yep, I want a baby. Like, my niece awakened my maternal instincts. Like, after her, I went home and I told my husband, I was like, yep, I'm ready. I'm ready to be a mom. I am absolutely ready. So he was like, all right, bet. Which I guess he had already been ready to be a father, but he was just waiting on me. So I was like, I am ready for my baby. So I have been tracking my fertility for years, and not intentionally. I tracked my period just so I could know when my period was starting, and I'm pretty like on time with my period. My period always comes when it's planned to come. So I've been tracking that for a long time. So I knew when I was fertile. I knew my fertile windows. So anyway, did the do, and I was like, okay, well, let me rewind that. So I am advanced maternal age. If you don't know what advanced maternal age means, that means you're either, you know, you're 35 or older. So me being advanced maternal age, I did go to my OB and I told her like, hey, we are trying for a baby. And she was like, well, just so you know, because of your age, it may take a while. You may not get pregnant the first month, especially because of your age. Give it some time. Don't get discouraged. It can take 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. But if in 6 months you're still not pregnant, come see me again and we can look at some other options. But she had told me that. So I'd already had it drilled in my head like, okay, it's going to take a while for me to get pregnant. I'm a little older, so let me not get discouraged. So a week before my period, I started feeling really sick, like really, really sick. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm pregnant. So I took a pregnancy test and it came back negative. And I Googled, and Google was like, no, it's far too early for you to know that you're pregnant. It's far too early. You're still in that like ovulation implementation stage. Like, it's too early. So I was like, okay, maybe it's in my head. Maybe I'm not actually pregnant. So, okay, I'm advanced maternal age. It may take a while. So I had that kind of drilled in my head. So I was really sick the week before my period, like crazy sick. And I'm like, am I pregnant already? Like, can't be. So I was like, I took a test and it came back negative. And I was like, okay. But I kept getting like sicker and sicker. And I remember I took a pregnancy test like every single day and they always came back negative. And I'm like, okay. So then I took one of those I took one of those pregnancy tests that say they can track, if your period, they can track if you're pregnant 5 days before your period starts. So I bought one of those and it was maybe like 3 days before my period started. And I did that and it still came back negative. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's in my head. Like, maybe I'm not pregnant. Maybe I'm just like, maybe it's all in my head. I want to be pregnant so bad that I am kind of psyching myself into like seeing these pregnancy symptoms. And honestly, people don't talk about how excruciating it is when you want to get pregnant and you are like waiting to see if your period starts or your period does not start. People don't talk about that. It's so excruciating. It was just so like painful. Not painful, but it was a lot. So like every day I'm just like, am I pregnant? Am I pregnant? Like, I just literally every day I was thinking that. So my period was supposed to come on Monday and it was like Wednesday at this point. And mind you, I was still taking pregnancy tests every single day, and they were still coming back negative. And I was taking like different kind to make sure that, you know, it wasn't just one that was negative. So again, guys, I'm super sick. My period is like 3 days late, and I'm still getting negative pregnancy tests. So I remember my period at this point was 3 days late. And I remember I woke up that morning. I would always do a pregnancy test early in the morning. I remember waking up that morning and I did a pregnancy test. I'm like, okay, like at this point, I'm 3 days late. I don't feel well. Like, pregnancy test is going to come back either positive or negative. So I took the pregnancy test and it came back negative. And I remember sitting on the floor crying. I was like crying because I just really thought I was pregnant. I didn't feel well. You know, I knew again that it may take some time. And my OB had already told me, you know, it may take some time for you to get pregnant. Don't get discouraged. It may not happen in your first month. It doesn't happen usually on the first month, so don't get discouraged. And I knew that. But, you know, deep down, you're kind of hoping that you're different. You're kind of hoping that, you know, you get pregnant immediately. Like, you're hoping that. So anyway, so I just remember my eyes were like bloodshot red. Like, I was like just crying on the bathroom floor because I was so ready to be pregnant. And then I remember like going in the kitchen. My husband was like in his room. He works from home, so he was like in his office. And I remember like going downstairs, and he couldn't see me. I remember going downstairs and just really crying, like boo-hooing at the kitchen table, and just saying like, God, like I'm ready to have a baby. Like, can you please bless my womb? Can you please bless my womb? So yeah, I was pretty devastated because I was ready, and I was like, man, I gotta try again next month, a whole another 30 days. And one thing about me, I'm working on this, but I am not the most patient person. And then also when it comes to like having babies, I know fertility is like a touchy subject. When it comes to having babies, like you don't have any control over it. You don't. Like, you can do IVF, you can try to get pregnant, you can try to be fertile, you can try to do it, you know, when you are ovulating, but you don't have any control over when you have babies and if you have babies. You have no control over it unless you're like adopt. But as far as like getting pregnant, you don't have any control over that. So anyway, so I was, you know, I was a little sad. I was a little devastated that I wasn't pregnant, and I cried. And then I just like, okay, well, I'll just try to get pregnant again next month. That's that. So my period had came and gone. It was supposed to start and it never came. It was supposed to start on Monday. At this point, it was like Friday. And my period had, and I'm, again, guys, I'm never, ever, rarely ever late on my period. So my period just didn't come. And I was just like, okay, well, maybe, you know, me trying to get pregnant so badly, I kind of like psyched myself into my period being late, or me missing my period, or, you know, stuff of that nature. Maybe I'm just so stressed out that my period just decided not to come. I don't know. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to take one more pregnancy test. And at that point, I was just so over it. Like, I was so over taking all these damn pregnancy tests. I was so over seeing the test come back negative every time. I just was like over it. And I just felt really discouraged. And I really didn't want to take another test because I was just like, I don't want to take another test and come back negative. But at the same time, my period didn't come. And, you know, let me just take one more test. One more test. So I went in the bathroom and I took the test, and I saw a very, very faint line. And I was like, is that what I think it is? So I took another pregnancy test. I took a different one because I bought like a bulk of them at Amazon. So I took another test, and that one came back and it said pregnant. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, is my mind playing tricks on me? So I took one more. I took 3 tests. I took one more, and that one also had a very faint line. And I remember I screamed. I was so happy my husband was not home at that time. He had like went to the gym. So I was in the bathroom, and I was just in complete shock. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I've taken all these pregnancy tests and it kept coming back negative, and my period has came and gone, and now it's positive. And I just was like looking at it, and I just was like, what the fuck? I'm pregnant. And I remember crying on the bathroom floor again. Except this time, they were tears of joy And I just was so happy. And the first person I called was my mom. And I told her. And I just was like, I can't believe it. I'm pregnant. I can't believe it. You're going to be a grandma. I can't believe it. I'm so excited. So that was like my story. So I just, fertility is a touchy subject, right? And I know women who struggle with fertility. And I know women who tried for years and could not get pregnant. So I do not mean this to brag or to boast. I do want to share though that one, I kept being told that because of my age that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant easily. And I was able to. And granted, there is some truth behind that, but your story does not have to be everybody else's story. And if one thing I can say that I learned is that just because something's true for someone doesn't mean it's going to be true for you. And also, just because you are 35 or older does not mean that you can't have kids. Does not mean that you're going to struggle to have kids. You may, but you may not. So keep that in the back of your head. Like, just because this was not just because it was hard for somebody else does not necessarily mean it's going to be hard for me. And then also, I got pregnant my first month trying. And I just was so committed it's going to take a while. So also remember that you may get pregnant your first month. It may not take forever. And also prayer works. I would literally sit at the kitchen table crying, asking God to bless my womb. And a few days later, I took a pregnancy test and it came back positive. Now, the reason why I think all of my tests are coming back negative is I just think I was just taking them too soon. And then also my HG levels or something like the HCHG, I'm putting on the screen if I'm saying it wrong. They were too low. That's why I had to know you're pregnant. They were too low for pregnancy to pick up on and to see that I was pregnant. It was too low. So I think a few reasons are why my pregnancy test kept coming back negative. But either way, like I just was over the moon. So I did not tell my husband until our anniversary. Like our anniversary was like a few days before. So the anniversary was like a week after I found out. So I was like, okay, I want to have like a really cute, we're having a baby, like little thing. So I waited until our anniversary and I told him then. So, but the people who knew was my mom and my friends. I just could not keep it a secret. I just was so excited. So I got pregnant, and I will say that my first trimester was rough. I was throwing up like every month. I honestly threw up most of my pregnancy. I gained weight. I was gaining weight, but I just was so sick my entire pregnancy. And I thought like after the first trimester, I would feel better. A few weeks during my second trimester, I felt amazing. But my first and my third trimester was so hard. I was like, oh my gosh. I remember my first trimester, I was so sick. I just would like be on the couch, just so nauseous. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, do I gotta do something the next like 9 months? It's crazy. But yeah, my pregnancy, it was a little rough. It was definitely a little rough. I threw up a lot. I had really bad pelvic pain like my entire pregnancy, which now makes sense. And I'm gonna tell you guys why. So my labor and delivery was traumatic. And if you are pregnant right now, turn off this video right now. You don't want to hear the rest of my story. Like my labor and delivery story was traumatic. So I went in there, I got induced at 40 weeks because again, advanced maternal age, they was like, recommend you get induced. The baby doesn't come at a certain time. And at 40 weeks, I was nowhere near ready to drop. And my mother actually was pregnant with me until she was 43 weeks. And then she was induced at 43 weeks and I still had not dropped at 43 weeks. So my mom had to get induced with me because I would not come. And I carried very similar to my mom. No, I had a boy, she had a girl. I feel like we carried very similar. And I truly feel like I would have been pregnant with my son for 43 weeks and he still wouldn't have came because he was not ready to come at 40 weeks. So anyway, so I got induced and I just knew I was going to have a very smooth delivery. Everybody has said it's all in your head. It's all in your head. If you go to the hospital and you think positive thoughts, then you're going to have a smooth delivery. So I had all these affirmations like my body knows what to do. I had all the affirmations like my body knows what to do. This comes natural to my body. This is going to be easy. I'm bringing life into this world. My body's meant for this. Girl, I had all the affirmations for a very positive pregnancy. My labor and delivery was a very, very traumatic. I ended up having a failed epidural. So I felt every contraction on Bitcoin. And I was told that Bitcoin contractions are even more painful than natural contractions because they're medically, like they're medical contractions. Like your body, they make you have contractions. It was the most painful thing ever. And I felt it all in my back. So my first epidural failed and I was like screaming for like 12 hours. I was like, I can feel everything. This epidural is not working. Like they would put like more of the liquid in it. It did nothing. Like I could feel every single sharp pain. And I just remember like the whole 12 hours. I remember for 12 hours, I just was like screaming for 12 hours. And eventually my nurse was like, okay, we're gonna get somebody else to come in here and see if they can give you another epidural or maybe a different spot because this epidural is not working for you. You're screaming, like you're crying, you're saying it's not working. So they gave me the epidural. That one worked. That one was amazing. But that first one, oh my God, it was awful. And when you like, personally for me, epidural hurt going into my back. People were saying, oh, you can't feel it going to your back. I felt it the first time it went in my back, and I felt it the second time it went into my back. But once the epidural kicked in, I felt so good. Oh my God, I felt so good. So anyway, so I never went into active labor. They could not get me past 5 centimeters dilation. Like I could not get further. I could not do that. And I was in labor for 48 hours. 48 hours and I could not. They had me doing all these like different yoga exercises and stretches and all this stuff to try to like get him to go down and try to get me to dilate further than 5 centimeters. And my body would not do it. They even broke my water. And this is where I feel like they made a huge mistake and why my baby ended up in NICU. They're trying to get me to dilate. Well, they broke my water and 20 hours later, I still was at 5 centimeters. So after 20 hours having my water broke, my mom was like, okay, something needs to happen because your water can only be broken for 24 hours and then you start having complications. So my mom really advocated for me, which if you are pregnant, I highly recommend having somebody's going to advocate for you. That's a doula, maybe that's your mom. Like granted, my husband was there, but he doesn't know he doesn't know. And on top of that, like, yeah, you can advocate for yourself, but you may be out of it. Like honestly, guys, I was out of it. I wasn't able to eat for 48 hours. I had contractions. I was just delirious. And so my mom really started advocating for me. And she told us like, okay, what are we going to do? Her water was broken 20 hours ago. She still is at 5 centimeters. She has not progressed at all. It's been 48 hours of her here. And it's been 20 hours since she broke her water. So all the doctors came in the room and it was like, okay, we're going to see if we can get this baby to go down, my son. So my son ended up being stuck. He was stuck on the side of he was like stuck. He could not move. They literally tried to move him and try to get him to move further in the center. He was head down, but he could not descend. And they could not get him. He was like stuck. 2 people tried to turn him and both times they failed. So that ended up making my cervix. Then my cervix became swollen. Then I developed a fever. Then I developed an infection all within an hour. An infection, a fever, my cervix is swollen. And again, I'm still 5 centimeters. I have not went past 5 centimeters dilated. And at that point, they're like, okay, she has a fever, she has an infection, her cervix is swollen, we're going to give her an emergency C-section. And that's one thing that kind of pissed me off. I had told them when I was having, like, my first epidural failed, and I was feeling everything, and I wasn't going past 5 centimeters. I told them then, like, just give me a C-section. At this point, I just want the baby out of me. Just give me a C-section on my baby's healthy. And they really did not want to give me a C-section. And it took me developing an infection and fever, my cervix being swollen, 48 hours, failed to progress, and then they gave me one. So by the time they gave me one, my child had developed meconium. In the womb, he had inhaled his poop. So he had to be rushed to the NICU. I didn't get golden hour. I didn't get skin to skin. Literally after my C-section, my husband cut the umbilical cord, and I touched him, and then he was out. So I didn't see my son for like 24 hours because when I went down there to go see him from NICU, he was in surgery. So the first 24 hours after having my child was probably painful because I didn't have my baby with me, and nobody prepares for their baby to be in NICU, especially when the baby is full term. My baby came at 40 weeks, so nobody, especially when you have a baby, you don't expect for your baby to go to NICU. You don't expect to have complications. You don't expect for all these things to happen. Especially as a first time mother, I did not expect for these things to happen. So my baby's in NICU, and it was really hard because I'm on the floor with the mothers. Like, it's the mommy and me floor, and I'm hearing moms and their babies. Like at night, I can literally hear babies crying. I don't have my baby with me. And I cried. I cried a lot that first night because I didn't have my child with me. And then I had an emergency C-section. That was just really hard on me. Like, I was in so much pain. I could barely move. So like they had to wheel me into NICU to see him because I just like, I need to see my child. Something else that was really hard and I did not prepare for is having to leave the hospital, like being released from the hospital and not having my child with me. We got the car seat, all this stuff ready for him. And when we left the hospital, my baby wasn't with me. My baby was still in NICU. And that was really hard because I figured, I'm going to go home with my baby, and I didn't go home with my baby. My son was in NICU. I visited him multiple times a day. Which, granted, you're not supposed to drive after a C-section, but I was like, no, I gotta see my baby. So I would literally go to NICU. He had his own room. So I would literally go to NICU early in the morning. I wake up, I would go at 8 a.m. and I would like go to see him, and I would stay until noon. And I would read to him, and I would pump, and I would do a little work, and I literally would stay in the NICU room with him until noon. I would go home just for a little bit, maybe take like a little nap or something, and then I would come back in the evening with my husband. And I was like in NICU a lot, and I didn't really take care of myself when my son was in NICU. I was like, I had a fresh C-section, and I was in a lot of pain, and I should take a better care of myself, but I just was like, no, I gotta see my baby all the time. So I would visit him. I would be in the NICU room all day, just pumping, reading to him, just telling him how much I loved him. I wanted him to know my voice. I wanted him to know that mommy was there. It was hard, especially because during that time, a lot of people were checking up on me. Hey, did you have your baby? Hey, did the baby come? I was getting a lot of stuff like that, and the baby had came. The baby wasn't with me. So like during that week, I didn't really talk to anybody. I didn't post. I just was very like, I fell off the face of the earth, and people were like hitting me up. Hey, did you have a baby? Hey, it's baby here, and it just, I didn't respond. I didn't. I like fell off the face of the earth. And once my son had came, I only told a few people. For the most part, my mom was updating people and just saying like, hey, the baby's here. They were asking for photos. I didn't really want to send them photos of my baby because he had all these plugs in him. And the first time I went down to NICU to see him, I remember he had all these plugs, and he had a plug in his lung, a plug in his stomach. He had plugs everywhere, and I boo-hooed. I cried because I could tell he was in pain. And I just was so devastated to see my baby in pain. And he was strapped up to all these plugs, and I cried. Oh my God, I cried. I just was not prepared to see him strapped up to all these plugs and in pain. But he started doing better. He started progressing better. He started breathing on his own. He started eating. He started to get better. And it was, like I said, I was there every day. I was there all day for the most part. And it was really hard, but I was determined to be there with my baby. And he started getting better. And they had told me that more than likely he'd be in NICU for about 2 weeks. That was what they told me, about 2 weeks. But he was able to be released in a week. And I remember I had came to, I came to read my book and stay with him. And the doctor came in and she said, he's doing so well that I think he'll be able to be released tomorrow. And I remember like looking at her and I was like, tomorrow? And she was like, yeah, he's doing so well. He breathed on his own. He's passed all his tests for the most part. I think we'll be able to come home tomorrow. I remember like calling my husband and being like, they said baby can come home tomorrow. Baby can come home tomorrow. I just was so excited to have him come home like a week early. And he came home and it was just, oh my gosh. I remember I could not sleep that night. I remember that night I couldn't sleep. I just was like, my baby's gonna come home tomorrow. And I was so excited to finally have my child. So baby came home and I was in absolute heaven that he was home. I just was so happy I finally got to take my child home. And I remember driving home, he was in the back seat in his car seat and he was asleep, and I could not believe it. I just was so happy. I was like, cannot wait to get home and hold him and cuddle with him. And it has been complete baby bliss. I absolutely love being a mother. It is so much fun. I was fully prepared to be a mom. I prayed to be a mom. I became a mom. I love it. Absolutely love it. And the one thing I love about motherhood is that I get to decide the kind of mom I want to be. I get to decide, and I love that for me. Being a mother has truly been one of the best experiences for me. I mean, granted, he's only like 3 months old, but we do so much fun stuff together. I took him to like a baby and me swim class. We're gonna do a baby and me yoga class. I'm gonna take him to the aquarium, the zoo. Like, I absolutely love being a mom, and I love being his mom more than anything. And granted, motherhood is not rainbows and butterflies all the time. And you know, I'll be missing out on a little sleep sometimes, but to me, it's totally worth it. And I do have a community who does help me, who does, you know, come watch the baby so I can do laundry on Sundays. And my husband's very, very active. He watches the baby, you know, during the day so I can sleep. So I do have a good community and a good village. And I think that's really important in motherhood. Like, I feel like motherhood's a lot easier when you have a village that can help you. Huda Beauty sent me some new blushes, and this one is in Peach Sorbet. And I'm so excited. Like a peachy, it literally matches my eyeshadow perfectly. So we're going to see what this looks like. I don't normally do a lot of liquid blushes, but we're going to see. We're going to see. It might be a little too light for me. Let's see. Actually, I like it. It's like a little glow. So your girl had a baby. She is loving motherhood. My labor delivery was a little rough. Trying to conceive was an experience, a journey, but I absolutely love being a mom. Do I want another baby? Absolutely. I wasn't sure I wanted another baby, but after having DJ, I'm like, yep, I can do another one. It'll be a while before I have another one, but I definitely do want a second one eventually. So yeah, I am so excited about motherhood, and I am so excited to be able to experience this stage of life. So in my next video, I'm going to share like a super easy makeup look that I do now as a mom that's like less than 10 minutes, because with a newborn, you do not have that much time. Like, you really have to time crunch, and I am learning that very, very, very quickly. So my next video, I'm going to show you guys my mom appropriate, newborn appropriate makeup look. So stay tuned for that video next.